Hello neighbors, it's Brad here at eTrailer, and today we're taking a look at installing the EcoHitch Trailer Hitch receiver on a 2024 Tesla Model Y. Now the great part about this hitch is it's going to be completely hidden behind this panel. It's also got a nice Tesla emblem that's going to allow you to pull that panel off and gain access to your 2" by 2" receiver tube opening. Now as far as safety chain loops, they are tucked up fairly high, but you still have access to those to be able to pull a trailer. And speaking of that, your weight capacities are going to be coming in with a gross trailer weight rating of 3,500 pounds. Now, as far as the tongue weight, you have 350 pounds. Now, all of your accessories are going to stay in place with a 5/8 pin and clip, which is not included with this hitch, but we have plenty of options available here at eTrailer. As far as installation goes, this is going to require pulling off the rear fascia, so there's quite a few steps involved with that, but none of them are particularly hard. If you're doing this at home, follow along on our video and we'll be able to get your hitch installed. But if this is something that's maybe beyond your scope, maybe you don't have the place, the tools, or want to do this, you can use our dealer locator to find someone close to you to get your hitch installed. To begin our installation, we're going to want to open up our rear hatch. We're also going to be taking out our cargo cover that we have here. And we can just peel this back because we're going to want to remove this threshold, and it's just going to be a series of clips. It's fairly tight here, but there is a notch that you can kind of get your fingers under right by the latch, and then if you can just peel that up, there's going to be plastic clips. So just kind of slowly work your way to each edge until you get all those clips to pop off. Keep firm pressure on it, and we should be able to get this removed. And it might help if you want to take the weather stripping and just kind of pull this back. It's kind of lipped in there so it holds it in place. But our clips, you can see we have 4 of them total with these alignment tabs. So as you pull it up, make sure you are pulling up and not back. We don't want to damage that in the process. With that removed, on each side we're going to find a plastic push pin that holds on to our side carpet. And to pry this up, there's slots all around it. You can just simply pop on the center with the trim panel tool or a flathead screwdriver, and then we can get this removed. Now, throughout this installation, there is going to be quite a bit of hardware that we're going to be removing, so having a nice organized spot to keep all of this will make reinstallation a lot easier. Head to each of your taillights, and you're going to find a plastic cap. This should pull out fairly easily. Again, if you have a plastic trim tool, you can pry on that, but this will just pull out. We'll do that on both sides. Now on each side, we're going to peel back our inside compartment here. So we should be able to just, again, peel back the weather stripping. It'll make it a lot easier to just pry this out. And there's going to be another alignment tab and clip up here, just because we had on that threshold. And if you peel it back far enough, that's going to give us access to the 2 nuts that are holding on the taillight. So there's going to be one located here, and then one that's a little bit higher. It's going to be an 8mm. Be careful not to drop these into the abyss here as you loosen them up. So I'll get in there with my small ratchet and get those taken out. And if you have access to the plug, we're also going to get that unplugged as well. And what I'd recommend doing is, these aren't super tight and they're on a stud with a decent amount of thread. So if you just get it loosened and then use your fingers to get the rest of it, that'll help make sure that you don't drop it. Our taillight plug has a red locking tab, so we're going to want to pry that back before pushing in to get that unplugged. So if you pull that red tab back and use that as leverage, that will unclip, and we'll just repeat the same steps on the other side. We're going to be removing both taillights, and what I've found that makes it a little bit easier, you might have noticed when unplugging, once those nuts are out of the way, this does become loose, and that's what I like to kind of loosen it up anyway, because sometimes dirt and debris will build up in here and make it tough to get these popped out. And we do need to be careful as these taillights do curve in here. We want to make sure we're not making contact and causing any chips. So pushing on the backside where that plug was is definitely a good help to kind of get this started. And then you can grab on this plastic and just take your time here. And once you kind of get that popped out, you can get this lower portion and we'll get this worked out. And if your charging port opens, you can use this ledge or you can open up the charging point. And if you can get fingers here, the tabs are located right below this plastic cover. So you should be able to pop that out and you'll see that this is where they're located. So when you're pulling this out, it's very important to pull straight back, not try to put it at an angle. We don't want to crack our taillights. Underneath each of our taillights, we're going to find this bolt that's attaching our fascia to this plastic. with the 10mm socket, we'll get that removed. We're going to head to each of our wheel wells and we're going to want a trim panel tool. If you have a plastic wedge trim panel tool, this will help. An 8mm socket and painter's tape, because this is going to start to be able to get our fascia separated. The first thing we're going to attack are the 2 plastic push pins that are located on our wheel well liner. And so with a small flathead or a trim panel tool, we'll pop these out just as we did in the interior. We're going to be peeling off this wheel well trim, and to get this popped out, I found just put a little piece of painter's tape right along this edge, and if you push on this inside edge, that'll give you enough of a small gap to be able to wedge a plastic trim tool here. That seems to be the easiest way. And then there's going to be a series of clips here, so just with a little bit of force and pressure, we'll get those to pop off, and then we'll work our way up. And our goal is to get past where the fascia meets the rear quarter panel. There we go. And once you get to this point, you should be fine. Now be careful not to bend the trim. You don't want to leave any permanent creases here. And this is going to give us that exposure to that 8mm screw that's holding that fascia on. So we're going to get that taken out. And then as we remove the fascia, we want to make sure we're not getting any scratches on our paint. So I'm going to take the painter's tape and put it on the 2 tabs that are located on the wheel well trim. And then I'm going to run it along the fascia as well as the rear quarter panel. So that way when we separate it, it's not rubbing against each other, and this is going to help protect that. Now heading underneath your vehicle, we're going to get this lower underbody panel taken down. It should be 6 plastic push pins and 7 screws. So the screws are going to be a 10mm bolt there. So we'll get those taken out, and then we're just going to work around this edge until we get them all removed. At this point, we're going to get our fascia removed, and I highly recommend an extra set of hands here. I have Jesse helping me, and the goal is to start popping from the outsides and then work our way towards the in. And on the underbody panel where we removed all that hardware, it is kind of interlocked with each other. So once we get everything popped out, we'll pull straight back. Be careful, there is going to be an electrical connector that we're going to want to separate. So don't pull back too far. And you're also going to want to have a nice safe place to keep your fascia while you get your hitch installed. And these clips just snap in, so as you work your way, just kind of keep pressure on the seams and you should be able to get them to pop up. Now where the taillight pocket is, if you just pry up on the fascia a little bit over these tabs, that'll help loosen that up. And then as I mentioned, it is kind of interlocked in that bottom portion, so if you pull the fascia down and out, that'll slide that out, making it fairly easy. And I mentioned that there might be an electrical plug. It could be a trim difference. On ours, we didn't have one. So if you do have one, get that separated. But at this point, we'll get our fascia put aside. We're going to remove the sensor bar that we have located in between the bumper beam and the opening. And there should be just 4 points of hardware holding it in. So it looks like a 10mm socket to accomplish that. And there are clips that hold this in, so we'll want to pry those out. So located just on the outside edges, we'll have those. And that pops out fairly easily. Now instead of unplugging this and removing it from the vehicle, you can just set this aside safely. We're going to be removing our cross member, which is the black metal that's attached to our bumper beam. And this is going to be a 15mm socket. You're going to want an extended one because of the studs. There's 1 up top and then 2 below, and then we'll have the same thing on the other side. So we'll get these taken out. Now we can slide our cross member and bumper beam out, and we'll keep this handy because we are going to be separating our bumper beam from those cross members. And to get our beam removed from the cross member, it's going to be the same socket with the 15, 3 on each side. So we'll get those taken out. Now the driver's side will come out very easy. On the passenger side, we do need to remove this bolt. This will be a 13mm socket to get that taken out. So now we'll take the cross member bumper beam and we're gonna put this right on our hitch. So with the hitch facing in the upward position, kind of align it the way that it sits on the vehicle. We'll put this in place, and then if you have your factory nuts handy, we're just gonna get these tightened down right onto those studs. Sometimes it's hard to get those started, especially that center one. I can't fit my fingers in there. So to give you a little bit of help, you'll take the socket with just like a paper towel or a small piece of paper, and if you press that in, that's gonna hold it in place, allowing you to drop this in and at least get it started. Now, once you get them snugged down by hand, we're gonna come back with a torque wrench, and the torque settings are found in the instruction manual. We'll get these all torqued down. Now, if you don't have a torque wrench, we have these here available at eTrailer. You can generally go to an auto parts store and rent one for free. But this is going to be important for all of the steps that require torquing because it makes sure that it's going to be tight enough, obviously, for the hitch to be able to do its job, but also not too tight, putting stress on any of the studs or any of the hardware. Now, we'll need to replace that bolt that we took off on the passenger side. So flip over our assembly, get that spacer fed in. We'll just feed that between the bumper beam and the hitch. And then we'll get this tightened down. And there's going to be a torque setting associated with this bolt as well. So make sure you refer to the instruction manual for that. Grab your nylon washers, and we're going to place 2 of them on the bottom outside and 1 of them on the inside. And we'll repeat that same step on the other side. Now grab the factory nuts that we took off from those studs, and we can lift our assembly in place and then get those hardware hand tight. Now's a good time too, because you have a little bit of lateral movement side to side. To get this perfectly aligned, you can use your hatch release and just mark down the center and make sure it's aligned with your receiver tube opening. Now go back with your torque wrench and get them all torqued down. We can get our sensor bar put back in place. Now before we get our fascia put back in place, we're going to want to pop out our center panel, as we're going to be mounting the handle and the magnet to allow this to slide into place. Now to get this popped out, there's going to be some tabs here. I'm just going to push down on those, and those are going to give me just a little bit more pressure put on the clips to make them easier to separate. And these ones, you just kind of push in the tab and push on that flat part, and you should be able to get this to pop out. Once you get a couple of them, you can kind of just work your way down and then get this removed. The magnet's going to hold this in place, so we no longer need these tabs. So we're going to be cutting out the center locking portion. So I'm just going to use a razor knife here. If you have just a pair of snips, you can also do that, but this is a nice easy way to get those cut out. So go ahead and you can get those little portions cut on all of these tabs. And we're also going to be cutting off these raised portions as well, again, just so it can freely go in and out when we have our magnet in place. In the instruction manual, you have like a gridded plastic that you can use as a reference for getting this mounted up. Main thing is you're going to want to get your center point figured out, and then I'm going to just use our bracket as our reference mark here. So you'll see that this portion, it is slightly bent. You're going to want this kind of facing just like that, and then our center point, we'll just line that up with our tab. You can see the Tesla emblem right there. So get this as centered as possible, and you can kind of use your fingers and center the bracket like this on the bottom. And then we're going to go ahead and just make our marks. I'm using a chalk marker here. You can use a paint marker or whatever. And we're just going to go ahead and put 2 little holes here, and then we'll get some pilot holes drilled out. If you want to double check yourself, you can measure from that dot to the outside edge and just make sure that it's cohesive on both sides. We'll do the same on this side as well. Our handle is the nice little Tesla emblem here. We're going to go ahead and take our Allen screws, pass that through, and then we have the 2 spacers. We're going to just feed this on here, and then we're going to feed our hardware through the holes that we drilled. And it does come with the included Allen wrench, so if you need to get these kind of started and run them through, you can use this before mounting it up, but these should go in pretty easily. Our bracket is going to go it's going to contour to it just as we kind of used it to mount it up. So it should, this point of the T should be at the same side of this bottom part of the bracket. We'll then drop our flat washers on here. And then we have our nylon lock nuts, so we'll get those tightened down. So now we're going to get our magnet placed in. So I passed our Phillips head screw through. And then we're going to finish this up with a flat washer and then our nylon lock nut. And this will, 10 millimeters should hold this in place while we tighten it down with our Phillips. Now just make sure that your magnet is flush with the plate here on the bottom. And now we're going to just go ahead and get our fascia reinstalled as well as the rest of our components just in the reverse order that we took them off. Now the last thing, we're going to put our center panel in, and so just kind of magnet's pretty strong here, so just kind of put this in the center of the hitch. You're going to want those to align those tabs, so I'll just push in on those until it sits flush. And that was a look and installation of the EcoHitch Trailer Hitch receiver on a 2024 Tesla Model Y.